Welcome to episode one of Choices and Consequences with Chris Skinner. Couldn't tell you, um, my friend basically dared me to do this and wants me to do this. Um, my name is Chris Skinner. I'll be your host. And I just wanted to start off by letting you know I was I was in a car accident 19 years ago. I was paralyzed from about the collarbones down, and you know, after after I was paralyzed, I mean, there's so much information that about everything. But let me just start off with this. After I was paralyzed, I went back to it was in a drinking driving accident, and I went back to some of those choices and continue to get. If you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you get. And so I realized that I needed to make some changes in my life, and possibly you do too. But really and truly, I wanted to start off this particular podcast with reading my autobiography. I wrote an autobiography called "The Ultimate Learning Experience," and it's subtitled a young man's journey through life. And we all have a journey. Life is tough. Um, you know, it, and I know in the Bible it says when you go through trials of any kind that it will produce, if you go through it, and it'll produce maturity and other things. But it says when, it doesn't say if you're going to face hard times. We all will face hard times. We all have a different journey, a different path. And it just so happened for me, at the age of 20 years old, after my sophomore year at college, it just happens that I took my seatbelt off 20 seconds before the last turn. I was a passenger, and my friend lost control of the vehicle, and I was paralyzed. I was airlifted to UVA hospital and woke up 13 days later from a sedated coma, and I had an entirely different life. Growing up, I was able-bodied man, wiggling my fingers, wiggling my toes, playing sports, playing anything with a ball, very confident, borderline arrogant, and individual. I made a lot of mistakes, hurt a lot of people, and really had to forgive myself and ask others to forgive me. And it's been a great learning lesson, a wonderful learning lesson. I, did a lot of manipulation. I did a lot of rationalization, justification. There was many things that now, being paralyzed and having to sit in a wheelchair and think about things for 19 years, I've learned a lot, and I'd like to just kind of share that wealth. And to start off, I've got this my book that I wrote called "The Ultimate Learning Experience," and I like to read first the foreword. And the book, it was written by a teacher that I had for a world survey of world religions. Her name was Dr. Koleski. I went to Radford University. She was an extremely strict and tough teacher, and you'll hear that in the book. But man, I mean, when I first got to school, when I got there, when I showed up, I had like long hair, and I took her course, and I failed it. Yeah, I failed it the first time, and then withdrawn. So, and then after I came back paralyzed, I took her class again, and things worked out good because I was much more motivated. I mean, I didn't do it when I had all of my physical capabilities, but when I came back to school without my physical capabilities, it was all about determination. It was all about willpower. It was all about reaching inside myself and grabbing all the God-given virtues that each and every one of us has. So when you hit a hard circumstance, remember that God has given you and me and all of us things that we couldn't even imagine. We can have a peace that surpasses all understanding when we get in those tough spots. So let me go ahead and start reading. This is from my religious professor at it's the forward, and then the next live feed I will go into the next chapter and just kind of give some commentary if needed or whatnot. So the forward. As a professor of religious studies at Radford University, it has been my privilege to know Chris Skinner. I don't know about that. But since January 2001, I don't think she didn't know and she didn't remember that I had taken her course before and flunked it, sitting in the back. But anyway, anywho, now you know, Miss Dr. Koleski, having drawn wisdom and hope from his ultimate learning experience, I am delighted to introduce this autobiographical account of it. I'm gonna make mistakes and stuff. This is a real, genuine podcast here, man. There's no room for fakeness. This is just real and raw. At the university, I have a justified reputation as one of the most difficult and uncompromising instructors. True story. My teaching philosophy exactly corresponds to the life approach Chris advises in the pages that follow. Students must demonstrate the self-discipline, perseverance, and accountability necessary for success in the real world. Many drop or fail my classes. Maybe some of you guys are taking right now teachers or courses that are very difficult, or you have in the past, or even in your daily work. There's all these difficult and strict things. Maybe you'll get something out of it. Let's see. Chris enrolled into world religion the first semester he returned to school after his accident. Given his severe physical limitations, I seriously doubted he could meet my rigorous academic standards, even with the disability accommodations. Still, his determination to try amazed me. In his place, I remember thinking I would simply give up. People say all the time to me, like, if I was in your circumstance, there's no way I could do it. I'd give up. And I think people sell themselves a little bit short, because you'd be amazed what humans can do, especially if you're drawing your power and your determination, if you will, from the Almighty God, because then you have the ultimate ability to draw from the infinite power. And that's the way I feel, and that's what I've done. And man, God has given me a really amazing life, where I met a beautiful woman who was my physical therapist. We've been married 15 years, and we have twins. So anyway, let me keep rolling here. As the semester progressed, he faced every imaginable difficulty. He was hospitalized for infections, dizziness and nauseous that impaired concentration, wheelchair malfunctions, etc. The hurtful interaction with the empty-headed, cute blonde-haired girl described in the chapter occurred in my class. Fortunately, I never learned her name. I'll read it in later chapters, but it's basically when I went back to school, going to my first class, when I pulled into with my wheelchair, I learned a hard lesson. I realized just how different I looked and how different people were going to treat me because of the way I looked. Sitting in the chair and having curled up hands like this, not being able to open my hands anymore. You'd be amazed at how people treat you. It's far out, man. It's unbelievable still to this day, but it is what it is. Let's keep going. This is written by Dr. Koleski, the forward in my book. Given all he had to contend with, I worried that Chris would fail the course, a discouragement I wanted no part in. Frankly, as I began reading him the first exam, I felt tempted to give facial or vocal hints. Wish she would have, but she didn't. At the same time, I knew Chris to be too bright and honest to want high marks he had not earned. That was very kind of her, but I'm not sure that I was there yet with my integrity levels and things of that nature. Better judgment prevailed. I put on my poker face and spoke in a monotone voice. By the fourth or fifth question, my anxiety disappeared. Chris needed no help from me to answer correctly. On an exam that plunged many of his enabled, able-bodied classmates irretrievably underwater, Chris scored a B. Chris not only finished world religion with that grade, but another course that included writing assignments. Completing 2 of my classes with a B makes him the academic equivalent of a Green Beret. I'm not sure about that. I'm definitely not sure about that, but whatever, I really appreciate it, Dr. Koleski. You're awesome. Chris's ultimate learning experience is a youthful but no less profound confrontation with timeless and universal truths, insight into life that, it so happens, correspond to venerable religious teachings. What did he learn? First, that we are all at the mercy of an unfathomable force. True. Fate or chance that can, at a moment's notice, transform ordinary life into an endless walking nightmare or rolling nightmare. He was not immune. Chris found out, and he accurately warns that no one is. Man, it's true. Your life, my life now still, everyone's life can change in just a snap of a finger. Just snap your finger, and that's how fast it can happen. I was just at a friend's wedding. I got into the vehicle, took my seatbelt off. 20 seconds later, snap, bang, I wake up. I'm paralyzed from the collarbones down. Can you imagine that? Can you think about, people all through life, they think they're getting sick. They go to the doctor. They have cancer or a brain tumor or things of that nature. Life is like that. That's why we need each other, and we need to do some of the things that I learned. Chris's second realization is the hallmark of maturity. Appearances are deceptive. True, appearances are so deceptive. Just like don't read a book by the cover. Let's make sure we get to know somebody, before it. Appearances are deceptive, and we must always look deeper. Before the accident, Chris possessed what many people, young and old, crave: physical attractiveness, athletic ability, popularity, a schedule of pleasurable self-indulgence. Suddenly falling out of the in crowd, as he did, taught not only hidden dangers of this lifestyle, but also the fleeting nature of its satisfactions. All that glitters is not gold. Vice versa, disasters, Chris learned, can be opportunities for enduring achievement. In some, there are higher and better aspirations than, in his words, temporary fun. Now, temporary fun is, you go out and you're hooked and you're just drinking alcohol and doing drugs or whatnot. And I look at, I have nothing against drinking alcohol. If you're 21 years old, Anybody can drink alcohol. I'm just saying from my experience and what I did, I know for a fact. Um, I was drinking a lot of alcohol and doing a lot of things that put myself in danger. And it was temporary fun. Like I had a bunch of issues that were going on from my childhood all the way to college, where I had a lot of anger inside of me. I had a ton of different issues that, if left without alcohol or drugs at that time, I didn't know how to deal with some of the things that I was battling within my heart, my soul, and my mind. And so when I would drink and things like that, it would help me escape that reality, if you will. And so in essence, I was self-medicating myself, and that's not good. We got to be able to live our lives to the fullest without using harmful things and things that can ultimately leave you paralyzed or dead. Just a beautiful life. It is temporary, but let's live it to the fullest. This brings us to the third lesson, which Chris teaches by consummate example: the possibility of heroism. Heroes are people who respond to the worst conditions with the best qualities. It is difficult to imagine anything more devastating. Excuse me, I gotta turn the page. Like I told you, this is raw. This is episode 1. We'll get through this. Then Chris's accident. There's nothing more devastating than Chris's accident and its aftermath, herein presented in unflinching detail. Unsurprisingly, victims of such adversity often bitterly withdraw from life. I'm not sure, but that's her perspective. It is nothing short of miraculous that Chris emerged champion, as he puts it, the virtues of desire, determination, willpower, ambition, and perseverance. While Chris is extraordinary, he reminds us that we all have heroic potential. As the sun daily rises, each of us not only can, but also must choose between strength and weakness, self-discipline and self-indulgence, hanging on and giving up. Fate may dictate less than optimal circumstances, but finally, we determine whether we become an asset or a liability to others and ourselves. In the pages that follow, the reader will find a spectacular case of the triumph of light over darkness, a victory that is never easy or assured, but which ultimately rests in your own hands. I can think of no one more worthy of emulation by young and old alike than Chris Skinner. Written by Susan Koleski, PhD, Professor of Religious Studies at Radford University. Man, that was every time I read it, every time I think of Dr. Koleski, I can't think of how wonderful that woman was and how much she taught me. And it took me to go back to school really wanting it and being in a paralyzed state, to realize that all the things that she was doing, being strict and whatnot, was for our benefit. She told us at the very beginning of the semester everything that she expected from us. And, then in the middle of the semester, if we would try to pull something on her, she'd say no, and then we would get frustrated and angry with her. But she had already told us everything that we needed to know. And the things that she was teaching us were things that we needed for life, things that we needed for everyday life, with our jobs, like showing up on time, making sure that when we write, we look at it. I remember she would say, I'm going to read your papers, and after 5 mistakes, I'm going to quit reading them and you fail. And that that was because we were expected to look over our papers, get other people to look over our papers, and write good papers, so that when we get in the workforce and we have to write memos or things like that, that we write, good memos and things that are, people look at us and say, well, they got their stuff together. They're squared away. But at that time, as a 17, 18, 19-year-old kid, man, I couldn't see it. Wasn't even looking for it. I basically went to college, and went crazy. Just went there to have fun and temporary fun, and didn't really realize and didn't focus on, hey, what do I want to major in so that when I graduate, I can get a job and, produce finances for a family one day, possibly, or just for myself. So I appreciate anybody who has joined me on this episode 1 of podcast. I've been practically dared by many friends to get on here and start sharing a little bit of my message and who I am. And I just got to tell you that I can do nothing without Jesus in my life, without God in my life. I was saved on September 29, 2001, and that's the most important thing in my life. And he has carried me over mountains that I thought I could never climb, over burning lava, through some of the most ridiculously hardest circumstances that I think a human can go through as a paralyzed man. And I just keep putting my faith in him and keep driving forward. I look forward to reading this book with you more and more. And like I said, this channel is about choices and consequences, and it's as real as it gets, as raw as it gets. There will be mistakes made because we're human. But I appreciate you listening. Thank you. And see you next time. Have a great, wonderful day. And go live your day. Have a purposeful day. Go and make a change. We all have a life because we're breathing. If you're breathing, it's a good thing. All of our lives matter. So let's go make them count. Thanks. Bye-bye.